I in principle opposed government coming in and bailing out a sector of the economy or an industry with government dollars and with government manipulation of that market, which is exactly what happened twice in 2008 and 2009. The first time it happened was the Wall Street bailout. On principle, I opposed the Wall Street bailout, even though I understand people, reasonable people could disagree. I felt that having the government come in such a major way and have a huge influence over the direction of that industry, that would be damaging to what I believe is the best way to resolve these types of problems, which lets the market work. Constructive capitalism, as Governor Romney was talking about in his days of Bain Capital, and destructive capitalism. And that means pain. I understand that. But it also means limited government, allowing markets to work because we believe they're more efficient over time. I held the same consistent position when it came to the auto bailouts. I can say that with respect to Governor Romney, that was not the case. He supported the folks on Wall Street and bailed out Wall Street, was all for it. And then when it came to the auto workers and the folks in Detroit, he said no. That to me is not a consistent principled position. I had one. I believe in markets, not just when they're convenient for me.
Governor?
Nice try, but now let's look at the facts. All right, first of all, let's go back in the auto industry and go back to 2000, I think it was 2008. President Bush was still in office, and the three chief executive officers of the three major auto companies got in their private planes and flew to Washington and said, please write us a check. I think they wanted $50 billion. And I wrote an op-ed in the paper, and I said, absolutely not. Don't write a check for $50 billion. These companies need to go through a managed bankruptcy, just like airlines have, just like other industries have. Go through a managed bankruptcy. And if they go through that managed bankruptcy and shed the excessive cost that's been put on them by the UAW and by their own mismanagement, then if they need help coming out of bankruptcy, the government can provide guarantees and get them back on their feet. No way would we allow the auto industry in America to totally implode and disappear. That was my view. Go through bankruptcy. When that happens, then the market can help lift them out. With regards to TARP, it's very simple, or the Wall Street. Look, I don't want to save any Wall Street bank. I just don't want to make sure we lose all of our banks. And like President Bush at the time, I was concerned that if we didn't do something, there was a pretty high risk that not just Wall Street banks, but all banks would collapse. And like many other people, many other economists, they were concerned that our entire currency system would go down. My view is this. We have to have industries that get in trouble go through bankruptcy. Now, Senator, you voted in favor of the bailout of the airline industry after 9/11. I think that was the right thing to do. It was an emergency. You also voted for the bailout of the steel industry. I don't think I agree with that one. But I do believe that the right course for the auto industry was to go through a managed bankruptcy process and then to get help getting out.
Governor, let me ask you, you mentioned President Bush's position on the Wall Street bailout. If you talk to people in the Bush administration at the time, they say they would have preferred the structured bankruptcy route that you talked about, but that there was no private capital available, that nobody would give the auto companies money, and that their choice, they say at the time, was to either give the government money or have them liquidate.
Yeah, it was really interesting because I wrote my piece and I said, look, these companies need to go through managed bankruptcy. And the head of the UAW said, we can't go through managed bankruptcy. The industry will disappear if that happens. And the politicians, Barack Obama's people, oh, no, we can't go through managed bankruptcy. 6 months, they wrote, I think it was $17 billion in checks to the auto companies. Then they finally realized I was right. They finally put them through managed bankruptcy. That was the time they needed help to get out of managed bankruptcy. Those monies they put in beforehand that was wasted money. And number two, because they put that money in, the president gave the companies to the UAW. They were part of the reason the companies were in trouble. Giving these companies to the UAW was wrong.
Hold on, Mr. Speaker. One second.
As Governor Romney Wells knows, that the American government shut down the airline industry after 9/11. And the government, by its action, stopped the airline industry from functioning. And yes, as a result of government action, which I thought it was appropriate for government since we shut down the industry after the events of 9/11.
I agree.
But government didn't shut down the banks. They didn't shut down the financial service industry. So when you compare those, it's not apples to apples, Mitt, and that's not a fair comparison.
Mr. Speaker.